In this video, we'll give you the top waiver wire players to target going into week 13, along with our top reactions to week 12. I'm Jim Coventry, joined by Anthony Cervino, and we are with RotoWire. Anthony, waiver wire, let's go to quarterback. Give Aiden O'Connell credit. He throws for 340 yards. He throws for 2 touchdowns. Understand right now, the Kansas City Chiefs defense is terrible. They can't stop the pass. Bryce Young lit him up like a Christmas tree. O'Connell lit him up. But I'll give O'Connell some credit. He threw the ball to Brock Bowers. He threw the ball to Jacoby Myers. And you know what? They're both excellent players. And if they continue doing that in the Raiders trail, O'Connell might have some 2-quarterback league appeal here.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell shocked me with how well he played. He looked more comfortable than I think I've ever seen him. And, the Chiefs have been playing good football most of the year. It feels like they're coming apart a little bit. And Aiden O'Connell took advantage of it, mostly with Bowers and Jacoby Myers. Moving forward, if you're in a 2-quarterback league or even a super flex, I think O'Connell is a nice stash.
Absolutely, he is. And we said earlier, they're going to trail a lot, and I think that really helps. Garbage time is good. And speaking of a quarterback, I said a moment ago, who tore up the Chiefs, was Bryce Young 2 weeks ago, and he played Tampa this week. He's had 2 good games. Look, it's been worked out that both teams, you could pass on them. But I'm not taking anything away from Bryce Young, because earlier in the year, Anthony, I said he didn't belong in an NFL roster. He's a different quarterback. Got Adam Thielen, getting him the ball, getting it to Leggett, David Moore, Tommy Tremble. Bryce Young engineered late comebacks in both of those games. I don't know what exactly he's going to be, but right now, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, from what I've seen in 2 weeks, you could consider playing him as a second quarterback.
Yeah, and the schedule is nice. Philly's going to be tough next week, but he gets teams like Dallas, Arizona, and Tampa Bay through weeks 15 to 17 in the fantasy playoffs. They run the ball well, which does open up the pass. I think that the benching of Bryce Young did do him good. And also David Canales. This was his first year with David Canales, and maybe it just took some time for Bryce Young to gel.
It's very possible, but now we're very favorable on Canales after seeing 2 weeks of this, right? You make up a good point, because we had a great thought on him earlier in his previous job, but now maybe pretty good here too. This one is just due diligence. Mac Jones, if Trevor Lawrence this time with the concussion, if a body at quarterback is a body at quarterback, if you're 2-quarterback league, 6 teams are on bye, you might need somebody. So Mac Jones could be somebody you got an emergency start next week, Anthony.
Yeah, this is a low priority ad, but again, this is more so for 2-quarterback, not super flex, because super flex, you can throw a positional player in there. Right? But if you have to have a body, then go ahead with Mac Jones. Mac Jones had a good. I was in on Mac Jones. I don't know if it's a product of the Patriots, but it all just fell apart. I think if he ended up in a good system and sat for a while, maybe in the future he could be something. But right now, he's Mac Jones.
Exactly. He's Mac Jones. Yeah. All right. Running back. So waiver wire running backs. Jordan Mason goes to the top of the list. Christian McCaffrey, unfortunately, and as of this recording is 11 a.m. Eastern time on Monday. The early reports are Christian McCaffrey, a PCL knee injury, probably out for the season. Jordan Mason, we saw he was great to start the season. He averaged over 100 yards with 3 touchdowns in his first 4 games. And then the efficiency started to drop. He wasn't seeing the carry volume. I shouldn't say the efficiency dropped. The carries dropped. Instead of seeing over 20 carries a game, he saw 14, 9, 14, and 6, and then CMC came back. So the workload went down significantly. And here's what we think, though. I want to paint this as Jordan Mason probably has fresh legs. He basically has had a month off, a few carries. With a month off, everybody's beat up in the NFL. I know Trent Williams is dinged up the left tackle, but I think Mason could do something in the stretch run. Thoughts?
Yeah, they're going to run the football. They like to run the football. And we saw Jordan Mason earlier this year. He looked like one of the best waiver wire pickups, or if you drafted him, because of how effective this running game normally is. Rest of season schedule outside of week 17 against Detroit is extremely favorable for running back Chicago, the Rams, and Miami. Guerrero did score in that game, but Jordan Mason played most of the snaps and had more opportunity. So he would be the guy I'm focusing on. And he will be available on waiver wires. Since CMC come back, I've taken a lot of questions about should I drop Jordan Mason. So, maybe do your due diligence and check the wire for him because he's going to be out there in a lot of leagues.
100%. Yeah, because McCaffrey was seeing almost every snap. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, great. All right. Let's go to Sincere McCormick of the Las Vegas Raiders. Plays the Chiefs, carries 12 times for 64 yards because Zamir White, the second running back, and Alexander Madison were out. Well, here's my thought, Anthony. McCormick may have played well enough that maybe if Madison and White come back, maybe McCormick holds on to a lead role in this offense. We won't know, but you grab him now. If he has that role next week for the fantasy playoffs, if you're in a pinch, you might be able to start him. Thoughts?
Yeah, and the Raiders, this is a team that they're looking into the future. They want to see if they have a running back on this roster. They've already kicked the tires on Zamir. They know what Madison is. Maybe they give Sincere McCormick legitimate run to see if there's anything here. I don't think it's out of the question that the Raiders are probably packing it in at this point, which is going to benefit some of the younger guys and some of the lesser known guys on the practice squad, and maybe they were drafted a little bit late. But yeah, he's somebody you want to add. And this is another team. You got Tampa, Jacksonville, New Orleans in 3 out of their next 4 games.
And then watch, Sincere McCormick finishes strong. We draft him next year like we drafted Zamir White this year, and we all end up in trouble. But no, just a joke. I know we had some shares of Zamir White, and yeah, it doesn't always work out. I did. Sometimes you get Rashad White last year, and sometimes you get Alexander Madison last year. You know what I mean? You project volume, and that happens. But anyway, Sincere McCormick is a possible add. Let's go to Jonathan Brooks, the Carolina Panthers. So in his debut in Week 12, he only had 2 touches, 8% of the snaps. Significantly different this week. He saw 6 carries, 3 targets, caught them all, 41 yards, did fine. Chuba Hubbard lost a fumble in overtime, and this was with them in field goal range. Carolina was going to win that game, and I know they paid him, but Brooks played well, and I wonder if that fumble, along with Brooks looking good, makes us closer to a 50-50 split. Thoughts on Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah, this is the most Brooks we have seen. Now, I think he only did play 14 snaps, but he did get 9 touches, and he looked good when he did touch the football. This is another team. They're looking towards the future. This is the time of year, December, down the stretch, where these bad teams, they're going to kick the tires, like we just talked about on Sincere McCormick. They're going to kick the tires and see what they have. And Brooks, they drafted him with some good draft capital. They want to see if they hit and if they're going to be running with the 2-man backfield moving forward. So it would not shock me at all. Good schedule down the stretch. Again, this is somebody, if he's available, you absolutely want to pick up.
We get to the sketchier pickups here. Chris Rodriguez, I'll explain this because he may not be an ad for somebody, might be for others. So Rodriguez rushes for 94 yards and a touchdown against the Titans. Now, most of that production came in garbage time. They were blowing them out. The score was actually even closer, and it wasn't close than it actually looked. So Brian Robinson didn't need to be on the field. Rodriguez is kind of an early down hammer, more like Brian Robinson. But on the day, Rodriguez plays 28% of the snaps. Jeremy McNichols plays 25%. Austin Eckler cannot come back until at least week 18, and fantasy season's over by then for most of you. If a couple of you playing week 18, you can maybe keep him. But because remember, you missed 4 games, and Washington is a bye next week. So important note, you could drop Eckler if you're an end week 17 league. But anyway, Rodriguez is probably a much better back than McNichols. They usually do keep 3 running backs active anyway. So if you're desperate, Rodriguez could have a shot. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Rodriguez is a nice player. We've seen him play well when given the opportunity. I do think this backfield is going to be dominated by McNichols, who was seeing the more significant playing time before the game was out of reach. But think of this as a handcuff. How many times this year have we seen Brian Robinson leave a game or miss time? This is a player you want to be proactive with and grab him if you have the space to stash him. Like if you're an Austin Eckler manager, he's in your IR spot. Don't be cute and try to go pick up Chris Rodriguez as a just-in-case ad.
Yep. And he is a good player. Rodriguez can play. He's a very good runner. Just for whatever reason, behind the wrong guys, and no other teams looked at him. Running backs are so considered replaceable. Didn't get many looks, but he's a powerful runner. Very good. Let's move next. Raheem Mostert seems to be back in the number 2 role. after Jalen Wright had supplanted him for a couple weeks. Mostert went back to about 35% of the snaps. It wasn't many touches. It's like 5 carries. I think he got a target in there. But again, if he is back in the change of pace role for whatever reason he wasn't, again, if Achane misses time, Mostert could be back as the guy who takes over. Anything there?
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in Miami right now with this offense, but we know the one thing that is constant is that Devin Achane role. And Devin Achane, to his credit, has stayed healthy, but there's always that what if. And I think Mostert, we will see an uptick in production. It's not all going to go to Jalen Wright if Achane did miss any time at all.
A couple more running backs. Kamani Vidal. Look, he only had 4 rushing attempts, but Gus Edwards handled 6. Now, I don't know how much the Chargers are going to be able to run the ball. That interior line is not good for running. They're out. Their tackles are very good. Interior line, you saw it. They get no push. But again, if the Chargers play with the lead, Vidal could see an expanded role. He could. But again, it's not going to be much. There's a scrape the barrel ad. 6 teams on bye next week. You just need something. Anything on Vidal?
Yeah, pick him up. You might have to use him. He looks like the number 2 guy, but this backfield without J.K. Dobbins, this offense without J.K. Dobbins, it's a mess. I think we have now, after how well Justin Herbert, I know I'm veering off, Herbert was playing well. I think he's gone now 2 games in a row without a touchdown pass.
Yes, he has. I'll be talking about that on the XM show on Saturday for sure. I already have that highlighted. It's like, right now I'm a little bit nervous. Hey, last one. This one's fairly sneaky because he's not rostered in a lot of leagues. Blake Corum saw a season-high 32% of the snaps, 8 carries, 42 yards. And the game against the Saints, the Rams were losing 6-0 at the half. This game was close the entire way. So Corum saw significant work for the first time all year. Maybe he retains that. But if he's going to get 8 carries, that's flex range. Anthony?
Yeah, I don't mind kicking the tires on players like this. Again, next week is another bye-mageddon. Blake Corum is a good runner. We know what he can do in college. We haven't seen a lot of him this year. But if the Rams are trying to think playoffs, maybe they want to preserve Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams isn't exactly playing like the guy we had last year either. So it would not shock me if Blake Corum got a little bit more run down the stretch.
I think that's a great point. Kyren Williams has had the benefit of missing 7 games as a rookie, missing 5 last year. He was almost usually, I mean, I know injuries are injuries, but he was fresh. He wasn't taking a pounding, and his carries weren't like, when you're missing that many games, you're playing a little more than half a season. Well, this year he's playing a workhorse role, and he's done that now through week 13. So you're right. He hasn't been as effective, and maybe it's a matter of him wearing down. We got a super chat question before we take our mid-show break, and we got a couple comments. Michael, thank you for the kind comments earlier. And he wants to rank these running backs to add for Dobbins as your running back 2 going forward. You're trying to get a first-round bye next week. Corum, Gibson, McCormick, Garendo, and Jamal Williams, and you want to know whether to keep JK. So that means you don't have an IR spot for him. Anthony, why don't you go ahead on that?
Yeah, so Dobbins is on IR now.
He is. He can come back in week 17 as opposed to Austin Eckler, who could come back in week 18 because Washington has a bye. So if you're playing, he's going for a first-round bye. If he gets it, he wins 1 game. Dobbins would potentially be back for the fantasy championship. Maybe. We don't know for sure, but maybe.
Okay, so first of all, the fantasy championship week 17, he gets the Patriots. So the matchup is there, which makes me want to keep J.K. Dobbins. When it comes to these players right now, I would probably rank them McCormick, Corum, Garendo, Gibson, Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, this is going to be really dicey. We're taking a shot at McCormick, expecting he'll retain some role. We don't know if the rug gets pulled on him, but my guess is it isn't. Like you, my guess is it isn't. That he did enough, and that running back room has struggled, and their record is kind of done. So I would agree with that definitely. And I also agree with, if you're in line to get a bye and you only got to win 1 game, keep J.K. Dobbins because you don't need him otherwise. You have a bye week and just 1 game without him. So I would do that for sure. All right. And Uncle Ted, I saw you mention Westbrook Kinney. We'll bring him up in the waiver wire. And let's say, all right, if you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings. You can get a free 2-day trial. You don't even need a credit card. Head on over to RotoWire.com/Jim. You can check out all of our content, all of our sports too, everything under the sun we cover. If you like it, great. join up with us. If not, we're glad you took a look at us and just move on our merry way. All right, Anthony, let's go to wide receiver waiver wire ads. And Michael, you're welcome. Adam Thielen. He's played very well in his 2 games since returning from injured reserve. The first week, the numbers weren't great, but he was interfered with on a potential touchdown against the Chiefs. He had a 2-point conversion where a guy speared him with the helmet and he didn't catch it. It was a personal foul. So Thielen was involved. He could have had a bigger game. Well, yesterday, it was even better. And Thielen, he got robbed on a touchdown. There was a great catch in the back of the end zone. They rule it out of bounds right away. They go to replay. Replay clearly shows he was in, possessed the ball, never hit the ground. For whatever reason, they don't overturn it. He got stuck on that one. Well, fortunately, Adam Thielen scores the go-ahead touchdown. Now, the game ended up going to overtime with like less than a minute left. Thielen made a great catch on that. He looks phenomenal. And here's the thing, Anthony. He's old, but he has fresh legs. That's huge. He's missed most of the season. So he's got a sprint. And last week we saw he had like a 6 or 7 week sprint and he was great. He's the number 1 guy there. So, and I know somebody's the targets, we might see Lee getting targets. David Moore got 9 targets, but Thielen's the guy. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I like Adam Thielen as a rest of season ad. He might be my number 1 receiver to add 10 targets last week. 899-1, and that was a bad, an easy matchup. Obviously, the Panthers week 14 is Philly. That's going to be really hard to overcome with the way that defense is playing right now. But then weeks 15 to 17, Dallas, Arizona, Tampa Bay. These are 3 of the easiest wide receiver schedules. Adam Thielen could be a very reliable flex play, and we have to remember Bryce Young is playing better. And last year, with the worst version of Bryce Young, he hyper targeted Thielen. So these targets that could go to Thielen might be more quality.
100%. And, we'll see how this shakes out. But Reed Blankenship, safety, went down with an injury and, middle of the field coverage. So this might work out well. But, yeah, Adam Thielen, like I said, I was excited about him. There were leagues that were deep leagues, and I was like ravaged with injuries, and I picked him up. Been starting him, and you know what? No complaints so far. See Charlene's in the house. Good morning. And Michael's pointing out Bryce Young leading on Thielen. Yeah, Sanders, I imagine, sounds like Sanders might be back sooner than later, but that connection with Thielen is very, very real. All right, let's go back to our wide receivers here. Marquez Valdes-Scantling did it again. Scores touchdowns at an incredible rate. Scored 3 straight games. Now, again, targets are very low, but he is the de facto number 1 receiver. When they need a deep shot, he's the guy to go to. They scheme up deep shots on rollouts and play action. So there we have it. So he can't keep the touchdown rate up. We'll talk about another player in that situation later. But if you're stuck and you got to use a player, it's got potential upside, Anthony.
Yeah, I'm a big MVS guy. This offseason I took him a lot because remember he was with Buffalo. And I'm thinking, okay, well, he couldn't do it with Mahomes. He couldn't do it with Aaron Rodgers. Josh Allen's going to be the one who does it. No, it's Derek Carr. And, this guy's not going to give you a lot of opportunity, right? He's gotten 3 or 4 targets the past 3 games since we have seen the emergence, but the quality of the target, the deep target, they're taking their shots. I think Alec Pierce when I think of MVS, and you can keep riding this because if you're in a bind and if it's bad enough to where you have to start MVS right now, you're doing well with the limited opportunity share because the targets that he's going to get have the potential to score the big play every time. So I like MVS if you're in a bind for the rest of the season. Like I had
a couple. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said it. It's crazy to say, but we're seeing, Westbrook Ikene right now continue a touchdown.
We'll bring him up. Yeah. Two
Yeah.
players away on him, but yeah, we'll bring him up in a moment. A couple comments about receivers. Uncle Ted talks about Devon Vele. I don't put him in this show because we cover players that played this weekend and he hasn't played yet. He plays Monday night, but they move him a little more. He used to be slot only. They're moving him to the outside a little bit more, and that's been useful. He's a big receiver, gets open fairly quickly. He can run a little bit after the catch. Clear number 2 in the passing attack at this point. So Devon Vele is a good PPR option. And then you mentioned David Moore. He'll be out as soon as Coker gets back. I imagine Coker's not a long-term injury, quadriceps injury. They didn't put him on IR. He missed 2 games already. There's probably a 60-70% chance Coker's back. So David Moore will go back to being irrelevant pretty quickly after that. And Charlene talking about picking up Michael Penix if Cousins doesn't do well. I say they're riding him. Unless they're out of the playoff picture, which at this point they're a game up. That couldn't be until week 17. And then would you trust Penix? I wouldn't. in a one-game thing. Anthony, any reason to pick up Penix?
Honestly, if you're in a super flex or a 2-quarterback league, I would stash him. But in a single quarterback, absolutely not.
Yeah, right. If you're super flex, you could stash for that reason. But yeah, the single quarterback, no. We'll see what that is. And then, all right, I think we're ready to move forward. All right, let's go back to our wide receiver waiver. As Brandon Cooks, he sees 7 targets, didn't play a lot of snaps. So there's that. So the fact he was involved, and I know CeeDee Lamb went out of that game with a shoulder injury, and it's hard to bet on an aging receiver coming up injury, a Cooper Rush, a quarterback. But there are games Dallas is going to trail, and in those games, Cooks could be the second wide receiver option. Jake Ferguson will be back. He'll relegate Schoonmaker back to backup status. But regardless, does Cooks have any value?
I don't mind him. Now, we know Brandon Cooks, he's a veteran. He's been there. But the bigger reason why I like Brandon Cooks is because how many more injuries are we going to see CeeDee Lamb sustain before Jerry Jones and the Cowboys say, you know what? I think we need to look ahead, because what if CeeDee Lamb suffers a significant injury and it potentially puts him out a month next year when they're trying to actually win again? So I don't know. This is a speculative ad. I do think there's a world where CeeDee Lamb's put on the shelf.
So the next player is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and I want to point this out. We talked about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He's got 4 touchdowns on 8 targets. I think it's 8 targets or 8 catches. Yeah. 8 catches, 4 touchdowns. Well, Westbrook-Ikhine is not far behind. On the season, he has 20 catches. 8 of those 20 are touchdowns. 40% of his catches are touchdowns. Now, if you've been riding him, 7 out of 8 games he scored. Could it continue? Can I prove no? No. It seems, or an offense that doesn't score a lot of points, how this guy's scoring on 40% of his catches. It has to disappear, and when it disappears, it'll disappear hard. But can I tell you what stops next week? No, I can't tell you that. So if you want to play the luck game, you want to roll the dice, he's playing almost every snap, getting 6+ targets in a lot of games, so at least he's getting some volume. Thoughts there, Anthony?
Yeah, and if you look at the schedule next week, you get Jacksonville. And this should be an offense where how many big plays does this team give up? We saw it. Nico Collins. I don't think Nico scored, but I know he hit his the over on his longest receptions prop. So this is a big play offense, and I'm willing to use Westbrook-Ikhine. This is bye Mageddon once again. 6 teams on a bye. There could be a lot worse players you can throw into your starting lineup than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine.
Exactly. Charlene had a question about Chris Rodriguez, probably about the 7-minute mark of the show. Probably around there we covered him. So if you want to just go back to YouTube later, you can just scroll back there. We covered him. We talked a good 2 minutes on him probably. Thank you for asking that. All right, back to the receivers. Demarcus Robinson, he did leave the game with a hand injury. We don't know if it's significant or not, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But again, 6 touchdowns in the last 6 games. Play 70% plus of the snaps. So usually sees 4 targets in a game. You're in a deep league. He has produced. He's done something. And there are some games he gets 40 yards, 50 yards. So I think at this point, Westbrook-Ikhine may be a better ad. But thoughts on DeMarcus Robinson?
If you look at the schedule, you got Buffalo, San Francisco, Jets, your next 3 games. And they're tough matchups. You would think that these defenses are going to, hey, let's take out Puka and Kupp.
Right.
Maybe these are spots where, DeMarcus Robinson is going to be targeted in the red zone. Like we saw yesterday. He does have at least 1 red zone target in all but 2 games.
Oh, yeah.
Since week 8. And I don't have the stat. Was that a red zone target yesterday where he scored?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. He caught one from 3 yards. He caught the 47-yard pass to get him to the 3 or 4. And the next play, they threw an out route, and Stafford threw a perfect pass the defender, corner of the end zone, snagged it, touchdown. Oh, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Teams got to focus on Kupp and Nakua, so DeMarcus Robinson's on the field, and defense are not going to worry about him because they got bigger fish to fry. So you're right. He definitely gets help out with there. So, all right, let's go to 2 more receivers. Andre Yoshivas, this is scraping the barrel, okay? Now, he lacks upside. 29 to 46 yards in 3 straight games. He does see occasional red zone targets. I wonder, Anthony, if the Bengals, they're going to be eliminated soon. If they're eliminated soon, you're not benching Chase. But if Higgins gets nicked up at all, his contract is done. Is there a chance that Yoshivas, once they get eliminated, sees a little more run, or is that just going way too out here? It might be.
That's hard because Higgins is on he's a free agent, right? They can't.
Right,
I don't
he'll
know.
be a free agent.
Yeah.
So if he gets any kind of nicked up and they're out of it, there's no reason for him to play.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a speculative ad, and he has some kind of a rapport with Joe Burrow. But this is just more of a deep league stash for me. I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah, and like I said, these are the scraping and the scrapest barrel thing. So, if you're in this, 16-team league or 14-team league with a lot of bench spots, it's all. And the last one, same kind of idea. Yes, Parker Washington had 100 yards yesterday and a touchdown. He did the same thing last year. Last year, he came in that first game when Kirk got hurt, had a huge game, and he did nothing the rest of the way. Well, this time he did nothing, and then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence gets knocked out, and all of a sudden, Parker Washington puts 100 yards. The odds of it happening again are slim, but he did have a 100-yard game with a touchdown, so that makes him a desperation PPR, Anthony.
Yeah, Washington benefited from a good matchup because Houston's secondary, they're one of the leakiest secondaries in the league, despite having an overall good defense. But, Kirk has been out quite a few weeks, and Parker Washington has barely been a blip on a radar. So this is not somebody I'm willing to trust, especially with a gauntlet of tough matchups. You get Tennessee, Jets, Vegas, Tennessee again in the fantasy championship. So, this would be like if you're one of those leagues, and there are out there that are like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, like 32 teams.
Right.
You're rostering like everybody. Like there's no waiver wire. Like everybody's on a roster. Like that would be a spot to use Parker Washington.
100%. All right. We got a couple comments before we get to our last segment of the waivers. Michael wants to know Tolbert or Cooks. I'm going Cooks. I think Cooks plays more. What are your thoughts?
I like Cooks too. Cooks was I think he had 7 or 8 targets on Thanksgiving and played over, it seemed like Jalen Tolbert. I think he also has more of a rapport because he's been there for a few years with Cooper Rush as well. So I would probably lean Brandon Cooks, even though Cooks might not be the future.
Jordan Mason for the number 1 waiver. I say absolutely. You're going to have a full-time starter for the fantasy playoffs unless he gets injured, and that's everybody. Anthony?
Absolutely. He's a top priority. I think a close number 2 might be Thielen, depending on what your team needs. But I think Mason's the top priority because you can also, even if you don't need him, you can stop somebody else from having him because there's not many guys on the waiver wire that can give you 20-point outings right now. And Michael
asked about Westbrook Kinney starting to connect with Levis. He's a great super flex. You realize, though, this is his 5th year in the league. He has been just a guy for 5 years. He always gets you about 370 to 470 in the yards, always gets you at least 3 touchdowns. He's got 8. But honestly, this is a guy that if a team brings in any good receiver, they've never had a reason to put him in the lineup and say, we want this guy. He just kind of falls into he's been on a team with a bad receiver depth chart. For instance, if Treylon Burks comes back from his injury Westbrook Kinney's probably off the field. So just understand that he's just a guy, but he's been in situations that have allowed him to do some stuff. He's always had those touchdown numbers, not to the degree of this year, but just understand that. And then we'll cover Juwan Johnson. You know what? He probably is. Taysom Hill looks like he's done for the year. Juwan Johnson should see an increase in targets. They've been throwing 5 to 7 targets to Taysom. Anthony, I didn't put Juwan Johnson in the tight end. Before I start, so go ahead and comment on that, and then we'll.
Juwan Johnson, I feel like he's always a guy I look at in the offseason to draft, and he's never quite used the right way. And Taysom Hill maybe is the reason why. Juwan Johnson is, I think, a very good player. He just lacks opportunity.
Exactly. 100% on that. Michael Lopez, I think we must have helped you on a lineup with Bucky Irving over London. Oh, wow. Bucky Irving had a heck of a game. Yeah. So anyway, congratulations on that. And thank you for asking people to hit the like button. Charlene wants to know Keenan Allen. We'll get to tight ends in a minute. Keenan Allen, look, right now, he's had 2 great games in a row. He's not nearly the player he was, but he still gets open and he gets targets. And Caleb Williams can get him the ball, and the Bears are trailing often. So I moved him up my rankings for the rest of the year. I moved him in the wide receiver 3 range, and I didn't have him in that earlier. Anthony?
I don't know if it was injury early, but this is a different version of Keenan Allen we're seeing. And I do think since the OC change, this passing offense looks better. I think Odunze has gotten a lot of hype. He's getting volume. He's not coming through with that. So I think the Bears are really going to rely on the veterans moving forward. But yeah, Keenan Allen, back-to-back big games. Why couldn't it continue? I think Caleb was going to continue to lean on. And again, injuries might have slowed him down. Maybe the weight gain was true in training camp. I don't know. I hate bringing that up, but he did not look like, if you remember watching him early, he did not look like the same player. Now he looks a little bit different. He looks like he has a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more stamina, a little bit more speed. I don't know.
All right, let's get to our waiver wire tight ends. We just did mention Juwan Johnson, but I want to kick off with Pat Freiermuth. Season high 7 targets this week, 59 or more yards in 2 straight games. Maybe Arthur Smith has figured out this guy can play. Smith has always thrown the ball to his tight ends. And in the first 4 weeks of the season, Freiermuth was getting 4 or 5 targets. And then he went like an 8 or so week funk where it was 2 or 3 targets every week, and he was useless. Well, in the last 2 weeks, far from useless. He had a great matchup yesterday. I recommended him as a streamer. He did score a touchdown, and he took advantage of the good matchup. But at some point, you would think Arthur Smith's going to wake up and say, this guy's a heck of a player. Anything on Freiermuth?
Yeah, not enough volume. This is only his second game above 4 targets on the year. He had another 7 back in week 4 and a very similar stat line. If he's ever going to be used correctly, then I think Freiermuth could flirt as a top 12 tight end. Until then, there's just too much volatility to trust him on a week-to-week basis. He's a matchup play, but this week you get Cleveland week 14. That's a pretty good matchup. So you might be able to use him again.
Noah Gray is next. Well, guess what? He didn't find the end zone last week after scoring 2 touchdowns, but he had a big game. He had at least 58 yards in that game, from my recollection. So he's an integral part of the offense. And teams aren't covering him because they can't, because they got to deal with Kelsey, and they had to deal now with Pacheco and DeAndre Hopkins. So Gray's on the field, and he's playing, I think, around 60% of the snaps, and they're releasing him out in the targets. So, look, you need a second tight end. There's touchdown upside. Can you guarantee he's going to keep going? Not with tight ends. You can't. Anything on Noah Gray?
I like Noah Gray a lot. Not only do I think is he going to probably be the heir apparent to Travis Kelce, but his usage, right? Like, I get you had a back-to-back games with the touchdowns, but this past week against Raiders, he had a season-high 6 targets. That's more targets than he had in the past 2 games where he was scoring, reasonable stat line, what you expect without the touchdown. But, when you have so many guys on this offense, right? Like I think I said it on our last show, like you now have DeAndre Hopkins and Worthy's coming to his own. You have Kelsey, Pacheco is back. All of a sudden, somebody like Noah Gray is going to slip out there and be open because you can't cover everybody.
No, exactly the case, and that's what they're banking on. Before we get to our reactions, 2 more comments. Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert? Dallas Goedert got some kind of an injury yesterday, and they're saying it's not serious, but the history of Dallas Goedert says if he's beat up, that means he's probably gone a couple weeks. And again, I'm not in the house. I don't know exactly what the deal is, but they brought up injury and not long term. That scares me. So right now, I'd say Zach Ertz. What about you, Anthony?
I would probably lean Zach Ertz as well. Zach Ertz is just more of a staple in this offense more than Goddard. Like, there's other options than Dallas Goedert, even with Devonta Smith hurt. Like, the offense is really running through Saquon and A.J. Brown, where Zach Ertz is probably the number 2 pass-catching option in Washington. Like, yeah, they have Noah Brown as Zacchaeus, but it's McLaurin or Ertz. They're the 2 biggest targets for Jaden Daniels. So I would rather lean on Zach Ertz down the stretch.
I saw Michael mentioning something about Jonnu. I mean, I'm stunned if he was on a waiver wire anytime in the last 3 weeks, but if he was, congratulations that you got him, because I'm stunned because he has been a stud for over a month. I mean, he's literally been like a top 3 tight end. So if you got him this late, congratulations. But I know we had him on the show we took him off weeks ago because we had to assume that he was highly rostered because he has been the gift that keeps on giving. Charlene asked a question about Jaden Daniels on bye, Kyler Murray this week. Murray is playing home against Seattle. Seattle, they really confused the heck out of him in the last matchup. I don't know if the offensive game plan is going to see what they did and react to it and do well, or I don't know if Mike McDonald's now have their number. So, look, I mean, you start him because your other guy's on bye, but right now in that matchup after he laid an egg 2 weeks ago, I'm nervous. Anthony?
Yeah, I'm nervous with Kyler overall because it wasn't just Seattle. He follows that up with another subpar performance against Minnesota. These 3 interceptions he's thrown in the past 2 games, he went on he's been taking care of the football most of this season. So, yes, I'm worried about Kyler Murray. The only good thing is that he normally does play well against Seattle, even though McDonald's an upgrade, on the defense. But it's also a home game, so I'm a little bit more comfortable starting Kyler at home versus Seattle.
That's a big point. You're right. The road game versus the home game. Seattle plays exponentially better at home. Always been the case. So, yeah, I mean, no reason to shy away from Kyler. I don't think he lays an egg here. All right, let's get to our reactions part of this show. Reaction number 1. How good are the Eagles? They beat the Ravens 24-19. They trailed 9-0. It was a garbage time touchdown at the end. This game was not close for most of it. Even though they gave it the early, it was a whooping. And Anthony, what I'll say is this with the Eagles. 2 things. First of all, their identity has become crystal clear focused. This is now a run-based offense. Their offensive line is bigger and badder than anything the defense has. We are going to get those 5 guys going down your throats, and we're sending Barkley. And Barkley might not get it done in the first quarter, might not get it done in the second quarter. But the more he keeps going, eventually he will break the dam. And we've seen it week after week now. 23 carries for $107 might not be the biggest numbers, but Baltimore's an excellent run defense, and they're not passing. 19 pass attempts in this game. And the only one I saw any real target volume, A.J. Brown, and it was only 6. So right now, A.J. Brown, I had him super high in my preseason rankings. Right now, it's a wide receiver 2 with a little bit of upside. Thoughts on the Eagles offense? We'll talk about the defense in a minute.
Yeah, this is the way that they want to run this offense, I think, not only to minimize any mistakes potentially from Jalen Hurts, but it also keeps him upright by limiting how much he's actually throwing the football. You bring in a guy like Saquon Barkley. I thought there was going to be some hiccups by losing, the center Kelsey, but this offensive line is playing outstanding. I think it might be a top 3 unit in the NFL right now, and we're seeing the benefit of Saquon Barkley. If it's working, and it is, I don't think the Eagles are going to shy away from it, especially it was so effective against Baltimore. This was the matchup that was going to tell me, okay, if they can limit Saquon, are they going to have to rely on throwing the football? And they should be able to against Baltimore. They didn't have to. And that's big. That tells me Philly and the way that defense managed to limit Derrick Henry and that explosive passing attack, Philly's a real deal Super Bowl contender right now.
And they have a legitimate chance of getting that 1 seed. They're a game back, legitimate chance. We'll see what happens with that. But if they do, that's going to be a massive advantage. Now, one more thing about the offense right now. We said that offensive line, and they're the best run blocking unit because, in my mind, because I mentioned earlier, the size and the athleticism, they just road grade you. They take it to the defense. The Lions have a great run blocking line, but it's different lines. It's not the same type of line. This is literally 5 dudes. Yeah. And Ilata is a beast. They're interior linemen, Anthony. Becton's a former tackle. The bulk and size they have across their line. This is a mammoth unit. They will wear you down. Yeah. I'm excited about them. But anyway, their defense. Vic Fangio, I have been singing his praises for a long, long time. In Miami, kicked him out of town because the players didn't like him. Oh, how sad. He didn't treat us the way we'd like to. You know what? The Eagles are probably in position to be the best defense in the league right now. And we got to give most of the credit to Vic Fangio because in the beginning of the season, we saw this talent and we were like, we got another bad defense. Now, they get 2 players as rookies. Quinion Mitchell's been great. Cooper DeJean's been great. But this whole defense has been orchestrated by Fangio. And I don't know if Ben Johnson, if Detroit's team plays them. I don't know if he cooks up a game plan that can overtake this defense. What do you think about the defense of the Eagles? Because they really took it to the Ravens.
That was my biggest concern in the offseason when trying to project the NFC was, because I assumed, okay, they're going to have 2 rookie defensive backs starting and a new defensive coordinator. But we've seen this before. Like, how many times in Kansas City did the offense have to carry them and their defense was a mess? And you could do whatever you want to them in the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, the Spags defense always came together no matter the personnel. We're seeing that with Fangio and Philly right now. They started to click at the right time, and it's all coming together. Like I think this defense might be better than the defense when they had Gannon and went to the Super Bowl.
Man,
Again, it was more historic with the sacks. I know that was a big thing, but this top to bottom unit, it's hard to get anything going on them.
It is. It's just a great team right now. Reaction number 2, the Steelers dismantle the Bengals. It was 44-38. It was not that close. It was a game that was controlled by the Steelers, and Joe Burrow made a nice, valiant comeback to try to keep it close, but it wasn't. And Russell Wilson, I believe, is the second highest passing yards performance of his career. Yeah. I knew he'd have a good game, Anthony. Did not see 414 yards or 3 touchdowns coming. And the funny thing is, because we knew that since he was vulnerable to the deep pass, and Russ has been great with that. Well, Pickens had 74 yards. After that, Freiermuth had 68. That was it. The running backs had over 100 receiving yards. The tight end room had over 100 receiving yards. It was spread out all over the place. Najee Harris, who had been inefficient as a runner the last 3 weeks, was playing a good run defense. He got back going here with a great game on the ground and through the air. This was, and again, it was a compromised defense, but the Steelers look great, Anthony.
Yeah, Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson, and I get Russ has been a little bit bumpy the past few weeks, and they've been overcoming and winning. And when you have to get into a shootout, we're seeing Russell Wilson step up, and he's able to keep up with Joe Burrow. I get Steelers controlled a lot of that game. They had some defensive turnovers at the end that really put this team over the top. But this Steelers team, even before Russ got there, when they had Mason Rudolph and these other guys, they've always had talent. Right. The offense, it wasn't, they weren't not productive offensively because they didn't have personnel. They didn't have the quarterback. And Russ is just good enough at this point of his career. And there's enough around him for him to go out there and do this type of performance. Like, I think so many people were jaded by the end of Seattle and jaded by what happened in Denver and overlooked, that Russ is still a pretty decent quarterback. And his numbers last year in Denver, they weren't bad. Statistically.
You know what matchup I would like to see in the NFL playoffs? I would like to see Pittsburgh go up against either the Chargers or the Broncos defenses. I would really like to see how they do in that scenario, because I have a feeling it would be a kryptonite for Russell Wilson. But it'd be cool to see if they actually could overcome that, because those would be, because realistically, well, even the Bills have a very good defense. So real quick question. Do you think Pittsburgh can handle offensively one of the big boy defenses?
What's a big boy? Like, is
the three I mentioned? No, Denver's elite. Yeah, Denver can cover. They can rush. They're a little light in the front seven, but it's not like Pittsburgh has a power running game.
I think because how Arthur Smith runs the football, and Najee's a good back, so is Jaylen Warren. I think with the potential balance on the offense, I think they could keep up. If it's all on Russ, like if you take away the running game, put it all on Russ, that's where I worry. But if Arthur Smith goes and does what he does, the balanced attack and the play action, and you just take some shots at George Pickens, I think the Steelers can beat anybody within reason. I'm not saying anybody is in like the Eagles or maybe the Lions, but I think they can keep up with some of these first round playoff teams they might face.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I can't wait to see it.
Plus the Steelers defense, they're not a slouch either.
No. They can't play themselves, but I get your point. Yeah, they are definitely a great defense, and they were playing with Alex Highsmith again. And when they get him back, the pass rush is even better, because we talk about TJ Watt all day long. And I know Alex Highsmith is not TJ Watt, but he is an elite pass rusher. When you have the bookends going, it's fun. Anyway, so that said, let's move on to the next one. Let's go to reaction number 3. The Vikings win 23-22 over the Cardinals with a late comeback. Anthony, there was a lot of football strategy talk. I think I heard Greg Olsen said during the game. I didn't listen because I have all the games on the red zone, so I don't hear any one announcer. But here is the thing. The Cardinals are up by 4. They kick a field goal to go up 6. That sounds right. They kicked the field. They were up 3. They were down deep in the red zone. It was 4th down. There was, I think, less than 2 minutes left. and they go for a field goal. And I said to myself, why? Why'd you go for a field goal? Because now all of a sudden you're up 6. So, and I thought to myself, all right, well, I get it, because if you went for it and you missed it, they come down and kick a field goal. It's time. But that's the whole point. What we're learning about the NFL is this. If you go up 6, which they did, you are forcing the offense to play for a touchdown. You're forcing them to be aggressive. And that plays against you sometimes in the NFL. And it did here, because there was a 4th down. I think it was at field goal range. And if it was regular, if it was a 3-point game, they would have kicked the field goal, had gone to overtime. Cardinals still could have won. But it was 4th and 7 or 4th and 8, and they had no choice. Got to go for it. And they did. They converted. They go down. They scored a touchdown, and they win. Okay. And going from 3 to 6, that is not a good way to play. It's a terrible way to play. Go for the touchdown. If you get it, you won. You're up 10, and it's over. And instead, they end up losing anyway. To the game itself. Sam Darnold may have flaws, and he may make mistakes every week. But my goodness, he seems to certainly find a way when his team is in danger to make enough plays to get him over the finish line. And he's not optimizing Justin Jefferson. 99 yards, 70 catches. Nice game. But Jefferson has had nearly production he had with Nick Mullins last year as he's had with Sam Darnold. But that said, the offense is no juggernaut, but the defense is great. And the offense and Darnold does enough to get by. Thoughts on the offense?
That's how I feel. It's just enough. This offense did look better for what it's worth earlier this year. And we also had better numbers earlier this year when the running game and Aaron Jones was more effective and efficient. For whatever has been going on, I feel like the correlation of this offense not looking right is along with Aaron Jones, his downfall. I don't know if it's age keeping up with him. I don't know if he's a little bit banged up, but they need to get Aaron Jones back on track somehow for this offense to play the way it looked earlier.
Christian Darrisaw, they lost their left tackle. He is one of the elite left tackles. Like, he's not just a pass protector. He is a beast in run blocking. He will set an edge. He will, take out the defenders. He'll open a massive chasm if he has to. And going to Cam Robinson was a nice patchwork, but it's a massive downgrade. And then defense is going to approach that whole line differently with no Darrisaw. And I think that's been coincidental with Aaron Jones slipping a little bit because he was getting elite level run blocking. Now he's getting good run blocking, but it's a big difference here. But anyway, the Vikings will be fun to see. But like I said, their defense has to keep dialing it up, and they do enough. And like I said, the offense has been getting by. Sam Darnold, you point out they started out early. That's the story of Sam Darnold's life. Sam Darnold, we saw him in a number of scenarios, 2-3 games, then all of a sudden it falls, but at least this time it hasn't collapsed. Charlene said she didn't like the Kansas City Vegas game. I get Kansas City. They just keep putting the W's up, and you're right. They shouldn't have won a lot of these games. We'll wonder if they're getting a lot of reinforcements. Left tackle DJ Humphries is a free agent. His ACL tear is cleared. They signed him. He'll probably be on the field in a couple weeks. They got Charles Omenihu, edge rusher, back from an ACL last week. He had 7.5 sacks in limited action last year. They're going to be getting Jalen Watson, their cornerback, who's been on IR for a while. So, and Isaiah Pacheco, they only eased him back. So they're going to keep winning games.
Marquise Brown will be here in week 17. I mean,
yes, and if they get the bye, that's another week for him to get his legs under him. So, look, the Chiefs are this team. They're going to get their dudes back for the playoffs. They've been playing without a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, if they get them back and they're all get their legs under them, this is going to be a way better team in January than it is now. Anthony?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, they want to see Kansas City fail and make, they're winning because of this, they're winning because of that. A win's a win in the NFL. And that's all it matters at the end of the day is getting that win and moving on. And they're winning different ways. I think that's important. Where some teams, you can't win from playing from behind. We've seen KC win with their defense, win with offense, win with special teams. It's not like, I think a few weeks at the Denver game, that kick was blocked. That wasn't a shank by the kicker. Their special teams made a play.
So we're going to do 2 quick takes. Reaction number 4, Bucky Irving. Now, the snaps are close again. in this game, it was like a couple percent, but Irving for the second game in a row had more snaps than White. White was playing about 62% of the snaps most of the season. Irving was playing in the 30s, but the touches were close. Now we see that the snaps are close, and this week, Irving has 28 touches to 12 for White. Now, Rachaad White, his stat line looked good, 11 for 76. When it went to overtime, he broke a 38-yard run. So in regulation, he was 10 for 38. Which is fine. 1 catch for 2 yards. Bucky Irving was a beast. 25 for a $152 and a touchdown, 3 catches for 33. So he was the pass catcher. He was the runner. He was the goal line guy. They're going to get a lot of work for both running backs. But to me, and I called this a couple weeks ago, and you did too, Anthony, White's the guy. White is I'm not going to say he's a running back 1, but he's a top 15 running back for sure with running back 1 upside. Anthony?
Bucky Irving, absolutely. The schedule's there, and we saw glimpses of it earlier this season because we knew coming in Rachaad White wasn't the most efficient runner, and we saw these in limited playing time, efficiency from Bucky Irving, and I thought, and you thought it was only a matter of time before he took over this backfield, and when Bucky started getting those running back touches, now he's getting the receiving work. And that's making him close to an every down back. Even though they will concede some work to Rachaad White, it just seems like this backfield has dramatically shifted in favor of Bucky Irving.
Yeah, like I said, I think somebody was asking me something on my show last night, and I said basically Rachaad White's a receiving back, and he can get some carries. He's that perfect change of pace guy, like Jaylen Warren. He's kind of like that. But in theory, you really don't want him running your offense. You had to last year, and fantasy managers loved it. But they did it because they had no other choice.
Yeah.
This year, they have another choice. They got a dude back there, and they're good. All right, reaction number 5. The Bills embarrassed the 49ers. The 49ers are decimated, so that wasn't any great shakes. But the Bills kind of remind us that when they have a lessened opponent, they could turn the screws on you offensively, defensively. But I want to say this. Josh Allen for fantasy, he ends up getting 1 pass that goes for a touchdown pass and a touchdown reception. So he throws it to Cooper. Allen runs to the side. Cooper pitches him the ball, and Allen runs it in. So he got 10 points for the 4 and the 6, and then whatever yardage he got and the pass attempt and all that. Josh Allen, go ahead.
Listen, Josh Allen, year in and year out, I'm the type, I'm trying to poke holes into his fantasy value. Well, this is going to be the year because they took this away, and they're only working with. He just finds ways. And until we see any type of regression, I think I need to get over it and start viewing him. Hey, he's a year in, year out, top 3 quarterback, possibly and probably should be the number 1 guy off the board. This was a year he overcame everything, and he's still operating at with no Diggs. They just got him Cooper. He hasn't been on the field. Rookie Curtis Samuel. Mac Hollins is making plays. Kincaid's not getting it done. Dawson Knox is making plays. This is a guy that he's a plug and play no matter what in fantasy. Sometimes you just don't have words to explain it.
Last comment before we get out. Amari Cooper has been playing less than half the snaps. We know he had a wrist injury. It might have been broken. He came back before the bye. He had 13 days off, and then he played a little bit last, about half the snaps. Another week, to get better. The fantasy playoffs. Well, next week we have the Rams in the fantasy playoffs, the Lions, New England, and the Jets. Is it possible that we're going to see Amari Cooper actually integrated into this offense now that we assume the wrist is probably healed? Because they used him on a lot of targets on few snaps that first game, but then he hurt his wrist. Anything there?
You would think so, because these upcoming matchups are tough, right? I get to San Francisco. They're the 49ers. They're tough. They're not. This is not the same 49ers team, but some of these matchups ahead, I think you're going to need all your dudes out there, including Keon Coleman, who should be good to go soon as well.
Yeah, I almost think they have to integrate Cooper. They brought him in for a reason, and they're going to need, in the NFL playoffs, Buffalo knows their history. They know they've done a choke job on something every year. Amari Cooper is one of the solutions. And if that chemistry is not beefed up by the playoffs, it could be a real problem for them. Now, are you starting Cooper in fantasy lineups next week? It's very hard to recommend him. But look, if he does something next week and you're in the fantasy playoffs, you need to see something. But as soon as you see something, I would jump on it. But right now, would you start him right now as a top 35 receiver?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Again, I need to see it to believe it.
It's tough, and here we go. But there is that. All right, everybody, we appreciate you greatly. We are on every Monday, RotoWire Fantasy Football, YouTube, depending where you're watching this. If you can head over there, like, subscribe, click notifications. We would love that very much. Anthony, you got a lot of short videos going on. Want to do a quick shout out on that?
Yeah, on YouTube and also TikTok, RotoWire TikTok, you'll see, Jim and I, we both do a lot of shorts in addition to our content here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football YouTube. But, early week, I have Waiver top 3 must-adds and the panic meter going out in the next few hours.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Quick question on the way out, tonight's game. Cleveland, they won 2 big divisional games. They beat Baltimore. They beat Pittsburgh. To me, that's a complete product of AFC North football.
Yep.
That is always going to happen. Otherwise, the Browns were getting spanked by the Saints. So in my mind, Cleveland is a terrible team, and I love them. They're a terrible team that can win their divisional games. I think Denver's defense caused them a lot of problems. We're going to see the mistake-prone Jameis Winston in this one. I think that this game, I'm laying the points. I think the last I saw was 5.5. It might be different after you could probably tell me that, but I'm laying the points, even if it was 6.5. Laying the points. I think Denver, who didn't close out well against the Raiders, but they covered. That was a divisional game. I think they have no problem closing out here. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's at 6.5 now. I would go if you're going to bet it, get it now before it moves to 7, and you're looking at a push, because I see this being a touchdown different.
All right, everybody, talk soon. Have a great day, and if you're still in your fantasy game in Week 13, good luck and hope you win.